The NCAA pre-seeds have been released. 4 Penn State wrestlers get a top seed. Some surprises, but pretty much status quo. And now every Penn State wrestler knows their path to get to the championship.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. Thank you so much for joining this live show here for Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily Penn State sports podcast, the #1 daily Penn State sports podcast out there. And I'm Zach Seyko, your host. The NCAA pre-seeds have been released. All 10 wrestlers know their paths, what it's going to take to get to the finals for their respective weight. 4 #1 seeds. I think there were some surprises, but we're going to go through each weight class, the path for each wrestler, and talk about what it means ultimately for them here on this live show. Remember, it is a live show, so please join the live chat and let me know your thoughts, comments, questions. So let's get into it with Luke Lilledahl. 125, and we'll work our way all the way up to heavyweight as we normally do here. Lilledahl gets the #1 seed in. This one is what I was expecting. Lilledahl had defeated Matt Ramos head-to-head. He was the #1 overall ranked wrestler consistently. And at the end of the day, what separated the two of them and what gave Luke Lilledahl a little bit of a better resume than some of his other counterparts is the fact that he did defeat Matt Ramos. And more importantly, he finished #1 at Big Tens. He finished in first place, 1 gold at 125. So that goes a long way because we saw the same thing happen with Braeden Davis, where Davis ultimately won at 125 a year ago and then was able to parlay that into a #1 seed. So the same thing happens here with Luke Lilledahl. And I'm going to rattle these off pretty frequently, or pretty quickly here, I should say. This is mostly to just talk about the seeds and who they could face and which matchups are the most interesting rather than getting into the deep analysis of it. But that's why we have a week to talk about this. So almost 1 week from tomorrow, this will go down in Philadelphia. So Lilledahl is the #1 seed. He could face either Caleb Smith of Nebraska or Sheldon Seymour, hypothetically, in that quarterfinal if they both make it. Max Gallagher of Penn is a 17 seed. So just some commonalities here as 2 Pennsylvania wrestlers could square off in that next matchup. But across the board, this one makes the most sense here at 125. Matt Ramos is a 2 seed. Eddie Ventresca of Virginia Tech is a 3 seed. Vincent Robinson of NC State is a 4 seed. I will keep an eye on the likes of a Spencer Moore from North Carolina, who was entered in as an at-large fortunately just for Luke Lilledahl. For the sake of the competition, maybe you'd like to see them wrestle, but that is a name to keep an eye on. He is a 14 seed. He's on the other side of the bracket. But when I initially look at Luke Lilledahl's path, there's nothing he can't handle on this side of the bracket. He's defeated Sheldon Seymour of Lehigh. He's defeated Caleb Smith of Nebraska twice. It's all there. Vincent Robinson is not going to be a favorable matchup by any means in that hypothetical semifinal if they both happen to make it. But I don't look at a glaring weakness that Lilledahl might have to deal with or a total mismatch, if you will, for his path. Now let's go to 133. So we expected Luke Lilledahl to get the top seed. He gets the top seed. 133, Braeden Davis gets the 8th seed, and that's what we were expecting here too. Braeden Davis, despite being 12-5 and accumulating a lot of frustrated Penn State fans, and I understand because of what the expectation is, but Davis, despite not being 100%, picked up quite a few quality victories along the way this season. The #3 seed, Nasir Bailey of Arkansas Little Rock. Remember, Davis did defeat him. Davis, despite being pinned by Nick Bazakis in that Big Ten tournament, actually did defeat him in the regular season. He did beat Dylan Shaver once upon a time. He did lose to Lucas Bird. Ryan Crookham's unfortunately not in this bracket. He's out due to injury, but I want to include Braxton Brown as well. That's somebody that Davis had defeated. Braxton Brown's the 9 seed here, so they're most likely on a crash course for that quarterfinal in that 8 versus 9, or that's the second round matchup between Davis and Brown. So Davis at least is in a situation where until you get to the quarterfinals where you are most likely going to face the number 1 seed, Lucas Bird, he should be expected to win against Kurt Phipps of Bucknell. That's his opening round matchup, the 25 seed. Braxton Brown of Maryland. That one's close. So could it go either way? Absolutely. But for Davis, it is at least a situation where you expect him to make the quarterfinal, and then Lucas Bird, that's the giant of this weight class. He's my national. He was my Big Ten title pick. He's my national title pick. I think he's the best wrestler of this group since there is no Ryan Crookham here. But that's a solid placement for Davis, who did not have a terrible season. He did not have a bad season. The 8th seed is completely appropriate for Davis. Then let's get to 141. So this one was the surprising one. Bo Bartlett is the number 2 seed, and I guess that's still nothing to complain about here. However, it would have been so beneficial for Bartlett or anybody, whomever was going to take the number 1 seed was benefiting immensely. I kid you not, because that 2 versus 3 seed hypothetical matchup is going to be a barn burner. And guess what? Bartlett's the number 2 seed. Brock Hardy of Nebraska gets the number 1 seed. Jesse Mendez of Ohio State, go figure, gets the number 3 seed. Go figure. So Bartlett versus Mendez, once again, most likely, right? I guess it's not a guarantee. I can't sit here and guarantee it, but that's the anticipated matchup in that semifinal, and someone's got to drop down to consolations. Again, if they get that far. Some of the potential matchups that could intrigue me here. Tegan Jamison of Oklahoma State is the 7th seed. That's a quarterfinal matchup waiting to happen between him and Bo Bartlett. I think Jesse Mendez is better than anybody else that's up on his side of the bracket. Vance Von Bauer ends up being the 6th seed, but I think Mendez should be able to defeat him, even though Von Bauer did make the Big Ten championship because he beat Bartlett. Andrew Alirez as an 8th seed. I don't know that I see Brock Hardy making it to Andrew Alirez as an 8th seed. I don't know. I think Brock Hardy might be one of the number 1 seeds to get knocked out, or sooner rather than later. One of the number 1 seeds to get knocked out pretty early. That is just not favorable. That doesn't do anybody any favors. So maybe hindsight's 2020 that Bartlett getting the 2 seed might actually benefit him. I thought he had a case for the 1 seed because he did defeat Brock Hardy in the regular season. But the difference here is the fact that Bartlett finished 3rd at Big Tens. Brock Hardy ultimately went on to win that Big Ten tournament at 141. I think if Hardy ends up losing to Von Bauer, I wouldn't have been surprised if Bartlett would have still been the number 1 seed in that case. But the Big Ten tournament victory, winning the Big Ten tournament outright, was just enough to get Hardy the number 1 seed. At the end of the day, to avoid Andrew Alirez earlier, but you still got to face Jesse Mendez. I don't know how you want to cut the cake here, but for Bartlett, it's still going to be a tough weight class at 141. 149, as expected, Shayne Van Ness is going to be the 3 seed. So talk about his path. And of course, Tyler Kasak being a top seed, Mitchell Messenbrink being a top seed. We'll get to all of it here coming up next on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. That is TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates, only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you for joining the live show here. And Bartlett got the 2 seed. At the end of the day, I don't know that he was going to avoid Jesse Mendez. I really don't. Who is number 1? Good question. So Luke Lilledahl is going to be a number 1 seed at 125. Bartlett is a 2 seed. I thought he was going to be the 1 seed. I thought he had a case for it, but it is Brock Hardy of Nebraska. Tyler Kasak, Mitchell Messenbrink, and Carter Starocci are your 1 seeds. They're projecting the team to get 157 points. I think they'll go over that number with ease. I do as well. I think that Penn State, but that's really not that far off. I don't with ease. It's close because that's from the record last year. That was 172 points. So the difference is 15. So there's really not a lot much that can change, but that's where bonus points come into play. So it's helpful that Luke Lilledahl, basically everybody, I think Braeden Davis is the weakest link when it comes to overall offense there, but just about everybody can score points at will. And then when you get to those closer, tougher matchups, obviously you just want to win, but it's going to be important if you're going to have any scoring titles or you're going to try to break projections or just be over the projection. It's about getting the bonus points in those early rounds. 172. We got 170. Penn State got 172 last year. Lightning Luke is our 125 savior. It's refreshing, isn't it? Penn State hasn't had just a nice starter in that lineup at the lightweight for quite some time. So Luke Lilledahl definitely, as a true freshman, to be a national title contender. Let's get back into the seeding. 149. Shayne Van Ness is the 3 seed, and that makes perfect sense because he lost to Ridge Lovett, and Ridge Lovett ultimately won Big Tens. Caleb Henson is undefeated, reigning NCAA champion, and he also defeated Ridge Lovett in the regular season as well. So Henson has every box checked. There's nothing really to debate and to analyze. This makes tons of sense. Van Ness being the 3 seed, it helps when you're able to defeat Kyle Parko not once but twice and almost tech fall him both times. The margin of victory just kept growing there. Van Ness also, I'm sure that he wants another crack at Cannon Webster, but he does avoid Cannon Webster. Webster's going to be that 7 seed. He's the Illinois wrestler that won at the Big Ten semifinal. I think it's interesting that Paniro Johnson of Iowa State is the 4 seed. And if I can find him, I think Kyle Parko, yes, is indeed the 5 seed. So Kyle Parko gets the 5 seed there. Either way, I don't think he was going to be the 4 seed, so I'm splitting hairs at this point. But he is not going to avoid Caleb Henson if he's going to make it that far. I think Caleb Henson is going to make it from the one side of the bracket, and then it's really Ridge Lovett and Shayne Van Ness on this side of the bracket. I don't see anybody that I can't say doesn't challenge Van Ness, but Van Ness is better than all of them. Lackland McNeil of North Carolina is the wrestler to watch in that hypothetical quarterfinal. Shayne Van Ness will face Gabe Willichel of Wyoming, the 30th seed. And that's his opening bout there. Could face either Andrew Clark or Chance Lamer of Cal Poly as that 14-19 seed, respectively. So Lackland McNeil is the matchup where things get really challenging or a little more challenging for Van Ness, but I would expect him to win that one. I really would. It's the Ridge Lovett match that projects in that 2 versus 3 semifinal. On to 157. If he isn't already for you, Tyler Kasak should be the odds-on favorite to win at 157. Yes, higher than Meyer Shapiro of Cornell, which will be an intriguing matchup if and when it happens. The only way it happens is in the NCAA championship. Kasak's the number 1 seed. He's going to wrestle either the 32nd or 33 seed from the pigtail match. Could face either DJ McGee or Cody Chittum of Iowa State. I hope I'm saying that right. Tommy Askey of Minnesota is the 9 seed. Joey Blaze of Purdue is the 8 seed. So there would be either of his quarterfinal opponents. But this bracket, outside of Kasak and Shapiro, I would be really surprised if anybody else makes the NCAA championship. And I know now that I say that, somebody's going to completely disrupt this bracket. What I do find interesting, Ja'Cory Teamer of Iowa is the 18 seed. Ja'Cory Teamer is the 18 seed and would have to go up against Shapiro in that second round match. Upset alert. Teamer just does not look like the same wrestler this season. Is it? He never lived up to the expectations at Iowa. Is the injury lingering, right? But if you're Meyer Shapiro, that's a matchup you do not want in the second round. That's all I'm going to say. You expect that one in the quarterfinal or the semifinal. So he's getting that right out of the gate after his first round matchup. So Antrell Taylor's the 3 seed of Nebraska. But I don't expect anybody to really challenge Tyler Kasak on that side of the bracket. I think it's a crash course with Meyer Shapiro all the way to the championship. 165, Mitchell Messenbrink is a number 1 seed. No doubts there. all along. What I do think is intriguing is that Mikey Caliendo is the 3 seed. I don't know that really changes much because he was going to be on the opposite end of the bracket. He does flip spots with Peyton Hall of West Virginia. Hall did win a Big Ten title. Caliendo came in second. So that's the difference here. And Hall is 30-1, 31 matches on the season for Hall in total. So he'll be the 2nd seed. I could see Peyton Hall defeating Mikey Caliendo. I really could. For Messenbrink, though, he could go up against his former teammate. Messenbrink, more or less, is the reason that Terrell Barraclaw had to transfer in the first place. I know Barraclaw was back and forth, 157, 165, but he could never find his spot in the starting lineup because, well, Levi Haynes was there, and then Mitchell Messenbrink transfers in, and then Barraclaw never settles in. Well, now Barraclaw goes to Utah Valley, and he's the number 4 seed. So there's your semifinals matchup if everything goes according to as it should. That would be something. For Penn State fans, that would be something. Messenbrink versus Barraclaw in that semifinal. Former teammates going up against one another. Obviously, I still think Messenbrink would win, but it makes for, I'm glad that these two would get to hypothetically wrestle each other. If they don't make it there, it would be a disservice, I think. And I don't have any questions about Messenbrink. It's Barraclaw. Will he be? And I'm confident that he would. However, he does need to go through Julian Ramirez of Cornell as that 5 seed. So it would not shock me by any means if he happened to lose to Ramirez, and that's who Messenbrink. I actually think if you're looking at the 165-pound bracket, you could make an argument to me that Ramirez is the 2nd best wrestler overall in terms of talent in this bracket, but we'll see how it goes. I don't think that it's Peyton Hall, he's the 2 seed. Oh, well, it's Caliendo. You could absolutely convince me and say, no, Julian Ramirez, if he was the 2 seed, he and Messenbrink would meet in that championship. I believe you. I would. 174. Same thing. We expected that Levi Haynes was going to be the 2 seed, and lo and behold, he is the 2 seed. Keegan O'Toole is the 1 seed. Dean Hamity is the 3 seed, and that's really the most that you need to know about this 174-pound bracket. Look, these are all good wrestlers. These are great wrestlers. You don't get to the postseason by accident, but these are your national title contenders. Everybody else is simply wrestling. They're battling it out for other spots on the podium. The O'Toole, Haynes, and Hamity are going to be your top 3 spots on the podium, but what order? What order? And I do not look past Dean Hamity. Do not look past Dean Hamity as that 3 seed. That in itself is championship caliber. It's a semifinal, which is 1 step away from the championship, but Hamity and Haynes, if they were opposite on the ends of the bracket, or if Keegan O'Toole wasn't in this conversation, that's who I think would be the 174-pound championship. But O'Toole is there. He defeated Hamity in sudden victory in that Big 12 championship, and now we're most likely going to see Levi Haynes against Hamity in that semifinal. 184, 197, Greg Kirkley gets a surprising spot, but we called it here on the show. He is not the 2 seed. He's the 3 seed. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, but we'll explain all of it more coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's show is also brought to you by Factor. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition? Well, Factor makes eating well easy. Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. So whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. And Factor, the best part about it is that it takes the stress out of meal planning. So you'll have your Protein Plus meals. They're packed with flavor, they're packed with nutrients, and they will keep you full all day long. It's the convenience that is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in a matter of minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That is code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box of Factor meals. 184, 197. and heavyweight. And the hope here in this conversation is that Josh Barr will be ready to go. Now, there is positive discourse that Barr should be available, but nevertheless, until tournament time rolls around, or until we get, public confirmation and everything, we'll get to talk to Cael Sanderson next week, right? And that's where he will answer that. But 184, Carter Starocci is the number 1 seed. As expected, Parker Kakaisen's the number 2 seed. Max McAnally of Minnesota is the number 3 seed. Starocci has a one-way ticket here to the championship, I believe. Dustin Plott's a 4 seed. He was runner-up a season ago and lost to Kakaisen in the NCAA championship. I don't think anything changes here, though. Starocci is better than Plott. Remember, Plott lost to Angelo Ferrari. Remember that. Plott did lose. So I think it's Starocci versus Kakaisen. I think that's what everybody's expecting here. Do not look past Max McAnally to make it interesting for Kakaisen. Do not do it, because I tried to say that in that championship. I know that Starocci won. I still expected him to win, but Max McAnally has arrived. He could see Starocci again in that 184 championship. 197, Josh Barr, even though he medically forfeited those remaining matches against Isaiah Salazar and Camden McDaniel of Nebraska, Barr's going to get the 4 seed here. No surprises, actually. It was my prediction. It was my expectation. Just because, okay, despite having to injury default in those matches, Barr's picked up how many impressive wins along the season against number 1 seed Jacob Cardenas, against Michael Beard of Lehigh, and against Stephen Little. So how is the NCAA committee going to sit there and say, well, Stephen Little and oh gosh, I'm Michael Beard. Gosh, I'm blanking on the name after I just said it. Michael Beard. How could you justify them being ahead of Josh Barr when he defeated both of them? Not one or the other, both of them head to head. So Cardenas is the 1 seed, Stephen Buchanan is the number 2 seed, AJ Ferrari is the number 3 seed, and Josh Barr is the number 4 seed. You got to go through Jacob Cardenas if you want to get through the championship. Regardless of Josh Barr's health, if he is available and he can go, I still think Barr is the number 4 wrestler. Even if he's not 100%, I am that confident in Barr. He would get a rematch against Michael Beard potentially in that quarterfinal, or Stephen Little. Michael Beard versus Stephen Little. Stephen Little could absolutely win. The coaches had them at 5 and 6 respectively. So Stephen Little's the 12 seed. That is no 12 seed. That is not your average 12 seed. So that's not an ideal matchup for Michael Beard going into the second round. Barr could face either of them, and fortunately for Barr, he's defeated both of them. But not being 100%, that certainly changes things. I still think Barr has enough in the gas can to get past them and meet Jacob Cardenas in the semifinal, where I'm probably going to have to pick Cardenas, but we'll cross that bridge, right? We will. At heavyweight, caught a little bit of flack for saying that Greg Kirkfleet was going to be the number 3 seed. But at the end of the day, Wyatt Hendrickson, okay, it doesn't matter, because one way or another, Wyatt Hendrickson and Greg Kirkfleet were going to have to wrestle to get to Gable Steveson. So you flip-flop the 2 and the 3 seed. What it does is it changes some of the matchups. So as the 3 seed, you got to go up against Josh Heinzelman potentially as that 6 seed. He's the Michigan wrestler. So it just kind of changes some hypothetical matchups there. As the 2 seed, you get some more favorable ones, I suppose. But it's Gable Steveson, it's Greg Kirkfleet, and it's Wyatt Hendrickson, and nobody else at heavyweight. Those are your top 3, and then there's a clear distance. It's Gable Steveson, it's Gap, Greg Kirkfleet, I think Gap, Wyatt Hendrickson, but I will give Hendrickson some credit. I think that one's going to be an intriguing matchup in the semifinal. I'm not trying to discount Hendrickson. I still think each individual wrestler is in a tier of their own, and then everybody else. It is truly everybody else at heavyweight, and it's just those 3. But Wyatt Hendrickson won a to explain this. He won a Big Ten title. He's the number 1 heavyweight when it comes to the RPI rankings. That does matter. He was undefeated. Whereas Kirkfleet, even though the only loss was to Steveson, he has fewer wins in total. His record is not as good. And Hendrickson probably has the same or close to the same amount of quality wins. But the difference here is that Hendrickson was undefeated. Hendrickson won a Big Ten title. Hendrickson was highly ranked, was number 1 in the RPI, and had more total wins. And at the end of the day, if you're objectively looking at the resumes, Hendrickson's the 2 and Kirkfleet is the 3. Now, this doesn't change anything in the scheme of the heavyweight bracket. If this was 3 versus 4, this would be monumental in the way the seeding is, because Owen Treffin of Lehigh undefeated until he meets Gable Steveson in that quarterfinals. So bottom line is Kirkfleet and Hendrickson. If it was a 3 versus 4 seed, it would be completely different. So no concerns there overall. That's going to be your semifinal, and we'll let them battle it out and decide it. So that's going to wrap it up here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, simply just going through each of the brackets, the potential paths for all of the wrestlers, and where they are seated. So Barr is seated. So just to get some other comments in here really quickly, Barr is seated at number 4. Will he be 100%? Most likely not. Most likely not. Any update on Barr's injury, potential availability for NCAAs? I'm going to gather that pretty soon. Cale Sanderson speaks to the media on Monday, so we'll get a clear, direct answer from Penn State himself, from Penn State side of things, right? And from Cale Sanderson himself. Cautious optimism. I think if you're asking me specifically, I don't have any inside reports at the moment, unfortunately. But the way the discourse is going amongst other wrestling, other media members covering wrestling, is that there is positive intel that Barr will be available, but he won't be 100%, just to kind of sum it up at this point. Kasak is going to kick some butt. Yes, he is. He should be your favorite. He should be your favorite at 157 pounds. I'm excited to see how Mikey Caliendo can duplicate the Big Ten finals. Maybe he's got to go through. He's got to go through Peyton Hall of West Virginia. It's not a guarantee that Messenbrink and Caliendo get to wrestle again. I see a collision course with O'Toole and Haynes. Haynes has to go through Hamity first. Hamity is not there. Those three are grouped together. There is not much that separates those three. Any of those wrestlers can win on any given day between the three of them. Who's better, Haynes or Messenbrink? To be a fly on the wall for that wrestle-off would be awesome, would be fantastic. That's tough to say. It's tough to say. I mean, right now, since Messenbrink's number 1 in his class, it depends if you're talking about head-to-head, their styles contrast so much. I don't know. I think they'd go 5-5 against each other if they wrestled 10 matches. But I'm going to finish. I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Let everybody go. Thank you so much for checking out this live show. Just to let everybody know what's on the way. More analysis, more conversations about Penn State wrestling, getting updates on Josh Barr, going through some of these hypothetical matchups, who has the most challenging path, who has the most favorable path. All of that and more is coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So be sure to be subscribed to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss any of these shows, especially when they go live, so that you can be a part of the conversation in real time as well. And that's going to do it for this one. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always, the #1 daily Penn State sports podcast out there. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for checking out this show. And I'll talk to you very soon here on the next edition of Locked On Nittany Lions.